Happy New Year. My name is Vasanta. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am dedicated Vedic astrologer to helping you navigate life and explaining what's going on out there. So I wish that I had very good news for January, which I do, because the energy of the planets are certainly better than in the past few months. There's liberation of planetary energy and positivity as well. However, the world is going to fall into this yoga called the Kalasarpa Yoga, which basically means that all the planets are going to be trapped on one side of the axis of the nodal karmic nodes of the moon, Rahu and Ketu. So what that basically means, even though everybody makes a very big fuss about it, and in India it's a very dreaded configuration when it comes along. But what it basically means is that we are forced, it's a very tight grip energetically of all the planets. And so it brings about into consciousness basically what problems that have been coming up during the positioning of the nodes of the moon in a specific sign. So at the moment that is Ketu in Scorpio and Rahu in Taurus. So the cycle is about letting go of old patterns and being able to be reborn into a new purpose or redefining our life based on our values. So during this month, what we're going to have is we're going to be reevaluating in the way that we have been approaching life and in the way that we have been maybe holding on to things that are no longer useful, holding on to relationships that are no longer viable or do no longer match our values. And we will be forced to, to revise and to do this. Coupled with that, we're going to have the presence of Mars transiting from a water sign to a fire sign. This is called the transiting Gandanta. You've heard it in this channel before. So whenever a planet transits in that way, what happens is that things can get aggravated in the area of emotions. Remember, between water, which represents feelings, and fire, which represents action, there can be an aggravation, of those doshas in the universal pattern or in the, in the atmosphere. So this happens around the 9th of January. Mars enters Gandanta, so there's a lot of aggression during that time. And that coupled with the fact that everybody's going to be dealing with stuff and everybody's in a very, very deep process of transformation can bring about a bit of challenges during this month. However, transformation is not specifically a bad thing. It can be a painful process if we resist it or if we have not prepared for it properly. However, everybody goes through transformations during their lifetime. So I always tell when I see configurations such as this one that, we're going to be seeing a lot of butterflies, in the horizon after this time passes. So the Gandanta, that will pass in about 15 days from the 9th, the effects of that. So the aggression will minimize. However, the Kalasarpa goes on till April, ends of April of this year. So what that basically means is that, during the last months of winter and the first months of springtime, we're going to be dealing with, whatever was left there trapped from this cycle. So remember, it was a cycle that was very tough, starting with the eclipse of 2020, which was very dreadful. The beginning of Corona. So what you can expect is the final chapter. It's almost like the final chapter in the video game where you're going to be facing the final boss and then conquering it and then going forward to, reassess what it is that you learn, what values, virtues, a better, deeper understanding of oneself and, coming back to the world to redefine reality and teach what you have learned in the journey. However, there is a point of the journey where we are going to be facing, the inevitability of letting a part of ourselves die so that the new one can take over and be reborn, and so that we can have the rebirth of reality. So it's a redefinition and a rebirth of reality. The process starts very strongly during this month. So what can you expect? You can expect a lot of relationships, breaking or taking the next level, the next step. You won't be able to avoid speaking about the things that need to be spoken about. I think humanity as a whole is going to conquer Corona definitely by the end of April. We should be on the other side of conquering the pandemic. And, after April 29th, I generally see that the panorama is going to be much, much better. Many changes when it comes to our approach into social media, into respect of the individual, into what way we want to be, treated and respected by the large multimedia companies. And all of this comes right in time because we're about to enter the era of the multiverse. So that is going to be pushed, I think specifically, starting with Jupiter and Aquarius, which is already there. And then, of course, Saturn in April moves again to Aquarius. So that is a leap in technology. Also, zero emissions are going to be in the panorama, and in what way we're going to shift into that. And electric cars and all of this, and as well as, electronic coins. So what we can expect in January is there's going to be a lot of debate when it comes to the way that all of these things are going to be regulated by the government and the government's attempt to regulate them. So the government is going to have about, since Saturn is in Capricorn, the sign of government, governments of the world are going to be very strong until the 29th of April, and then from then forward, we're going to see that the power is handed down once again to the tech companies, I think. So also banking is going to be in the spotlight after April 29th. So what's up for January? We also have the Venus retrograde from the 1st of January all the way to the 29th. So Venus is going to be retrograde throughout the month. That is the planet of love and comfort. It retrogrades and it brings about consciousness. Again, what it means to love, whether we have an authenticity and a cohesion between what we say we think is love, or our attitude about love and service, and what we're actually doing and in the way that we're actually acting. So that is going to come into question so that we can move forward in that sense. And then, aggravating everything will be Mercury retrograde from the 14th onwards, which is, when Mercury retrogrades, in this case in Sagittarius, there can be a lot of broken phone situations in the world that, what I would recommend is try to say what you mean to say and try to say it in person. To the person that you're trying to communicate to, as to avoid any misunderstandings. So anything that has to do with legal issues, payments, contracts that you sign, try to do it before the 14th, because from the 14th onwards, Mercury is not going to be very helpful. When Mercury goes retrograde, you can expect electronics to break, you can expect communications to break, you can expect things that usually we give for granted not work so properly. So maybe vehicles, machines, electronic grids, all of that. I think mainly the way that this Mercury retrograde is going to affect the world is that being in Sagittarius, lorded by Jupiter, I think that dialogue concerning privacy, communications, and the entrance of the metaverse is going to start being discussed perhaps in legislation or in regulation, and as well as it's going to enter like a principal character in the play of these of the last of the current times, I would say. So in a nutshell, that is what is happening. Now we're going to go day by day so that you can have a guide of the month and be more accurate about what happens in the first, second, third, fourth week. If you want a written example of this that you can keep home, you can print it. I always have my free PDF that comes out every month. You can subscribe to my newsletter and it'll be delivered to your email every month. It's a printable PDF copy, and in it you'll see all the auspicious days. So, there we are marking what days are good for buying, selling, purchasing, what days not to do anything, what are dangerous days, etc. So in this way you can keep track of important decisions in your life. It's a service that we do absolutely for free. So if you want the calendar, you can, everything's in the link below. So here we start with, on the 3rd, we have the retrograde of Venus conjunct the moon. So that happens in Sagittarius. And that brings about a pretty nice atmosphere. It'll be neutral, but it brings out a pretty inspirational atmosphere. So I think the new year starts with some inspiration that, okay, there's been mistakes, and we can assess them, we can learn from them, and we can go forward. So generally, that's the consensus. The general feeling in the world is going to be that something we have learned, even though there's been suffering. But the definite assurance that we can deal with it forward. Then on the 6th, we have Jupiter conjunct with the moon in Aquarius, so that's pretty nice. So during that time, I think, we have high spirits, high hopes for the new year. So it's going to be progressing into that. 7th to 9, the moon is going to be in Pisces, aspected by Saturn in Capricorn. So at that time, what we're going to be feeling is that perhaps we need to help those in need. So that is the theme for the first 10 days of January, I would say. Our capacity to perhaps give charity and help, because I see lots of natural disasters happening. So like hurricanes or floods, people being destitute on their property. So that's going to come about, and there's going to be opportunities for helping people to remake their life. Now on the 9th, what happens is that Mars goes into Gandanta. So at this time, you have to be very, very careful. I've marked it in red here, because you need to be very careful with your relationships, things coming up, that perhaps you don't want to revisit or are uncomfortable, but being put in your face so that you can work on it. So these are times where people are very irritated. With a client, I was telling them, they were asking me, should we apply for a visa? We want to go to America. I was telling them, try not to do it during this, Mars in Gandanta, because people are going to be very irritated. So around that time, I think we're going to hear about the conflicts that have been going on between Ukraine and Russia, what's going to happen then. So that'll be the high point of, that pressure bottle. And at that time, we're going to be knowing. So it's a time for, you could walk into a minefield, in the area of personal relationships as well. Then on the 13th, we have Ekadashi, which is a day for fasting during this cycle. I recommend, if you can fast in both Ekadashis, that's going to be very good for you. Because it's a month of a lot of aggression. So Ekadashi, it's like a bottleneck where we are always instructed not to eat grains and heavy foodstuffs, and to just take a very light diet of perhaps fruit or even just water, so that our body energies can replenish and readjust. So it's the perfect day to do it karmically. On this Ekadashi, Rahu is going to be conjunct in Taurus. So there is, the call for our values. So around that time, people are going to be like, okay, wait a minute, I feel in a certain way, but it doesn't mean that just because I feel like that, I have to act like that. I also have to ask myself what my values are and what the attitude that I want to define myself with can be. So remember, one thing is to react, and then the other thing is to go back to oneself and check on one's values, which is, by our values, we choose to become the person that we choose to craft. So it's always better to choose some values. So around the 13th, we have an opportunity for this. Then on the 14th is the auspicious day of Makara Sankranti. So that day in India is dedicated to the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Devi. And on that day in India, people are performing the Sankranti Puja. So on that day, it is said that, you should give grains in donation. And whatever you give in donation on that day, it'll come tenfold, 100-fold to you. So it's a very good day to seek the blessings by giving charity. So, on that day, try to do so. And, what it basically means is the ascending energy, right? The positive energy is going to kick back in. So ideas for success and new projects. That's around the time that energy moves forward in the year after the holidays, which is basically a low season in energy to produce, right? So like if you see, most people take the holidays off, and that's it. Then on the 14th, and remember, we're already in this Kalasarpa, so all the planets are on one side of the axis, really vibrating to make things happen. So on the 14th, we have the Mercury retrograde, so that's when things are, on top of that, Mars in Gandanta, and people being, frustrated on their relationships and their dealings, and what was expected to be of a swift type of flow, and to find resistance in it. So there's tension. And then on top of that, we're going to have the Mercury retrograde. Now, this is not very rare. Mercury retrogrades happens quite often. Like in a year, you'll have two retrogrades at least, 2-3 times. So, it's not all that rare. But what happens is we got to be careful in our communications, because we might be misunderstood, or somebody may think we said something we didn't. So try to communicate personally whatever it is that you have to communicate. Then on the 15th, the moon's in Gemini, and it'll be aspected by the two benefics, Jupiter and Venus. And it's also Trayodasi, which is the day of victory. So it's actually a really, really good day. The month comes with a couple of good days, being the 15th and the 29th. So on the 15th, if you have anything to do, you can do it then. And the moon's going to be really happy. However, the Lord of the Moon, being Mercury, is retrograde. So the results will take some time to come forward. On the 16th, Mars enters Sagittarius. So that's pretty good. Mars feels pretty good in Sagittarius as well. Than it does in Scorpio, but it'll be less intense energy in inner work, and it'll be more driven to the outside, to the future, to go forward. So if you see here in the quadrant of fire up here, what we're gonna have is, by the time we reach the middle of the month, there's a lot of planets in Sagittarius, and they are lorded by Jupiter in Aquarius. Whoop, all the way up there. Jupiter in Aquarius. So that means that we're going to be philosophizing and preparing for the next step in our technological journey. So the technological journey includes cars, AI, currency, and the metaverse. I think AI is going to come last, but the metaverse is going to kick in right away. We're going to be looking at Bitcoin and blockchain a lot more. So basically what I see is that during this next 2.5 years, the world is going to shift from normal banking to blockchain, but that as well is going to be regulated by the government. So the wild, wild west of blockchain and Bitcoin, those times are going to come to be over as soon as Saturn goes into Aquarius, ends of April of 2022. So, a lot of the discussion is going to be there. Then on the 17th, we have the full moon. So by then, the energies of the cycle reach their peak. So it's going to be really, really intense. The energies at that moment are very intense. And the moon being in Cancer is being aspected by Saturn and Mars. So you can expect it's a time where there is resolution. So whatever conflict comes up in your life during this time, you will be expected to digest it and take a decision by the 17th. And you're going to be feeling that you're pushed into it. So that's the way the month is coming up, right? That's the challenge of the month. Then on the 20th, we have Moon in Leo with a Jupiter aspect. So even though there might be a challenge to come to grips to, what decision you're going to take between 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th, by the 20th, you feel more confident that, okay, we can go forward. This is the decision we've taken. You can feel that you can go forward. Then on the 23rd, we have the Sun and Mercury conjuncting Capricorn. Mercury is still retrograde. So there's a lot of legal stuff and, agreements being rethought and closed with a certain degree and amount of pressure, going on. So, visas and traveling, we can still see restrictions. So there is going to be the push and pull between opening airports and opening life and keeping it closed. It is going to be a frustrating month and a pretty uncertain month in that sense. having the hope and the expectation that, for example, you can travel and then at the latest hour being rejected because you're missing a paper, a vaccine, or and counting on something and then being rejected. So for all of those people that are going to apply for any type of governmental paper or visa or doing any type of legal stuff, it's a month that is going to experience some frustration. And then in the business world as well, a lot of setbacks and a lot of pushback on timelines, with a high degree of frustration and irritation. So be aware of that, because again, Mars is going to be pretty intense during this time, and there is a lot of everything is coming together. It's like having a traffic jam on one side of the road and then having the other side of the road clear, right? But in one direction there's a traffic jam, so there's an amount of frustration, there's an overload of energy. Then on the 24th we have Moon in Libra aspected by Saturn and Jupiter. So that is a point of stress during the month as well. Anytime that the moon gets aspected by the big energies, it's a bit of a push and pull. So Saturn and Jupiter, Jupiter is pushing to expand and Saturn is pushing to contract. So perhaps being very inspired to buy a new piece of technology or invest in a direction, and being held back because of considerations on economy, etc. On the 27th, we have Moon and Ketu conjunct in Scorpio. So again, by that time, I think there's a bit of exhaustion from the month. However, by that time, things should be done. So you're closing cycles, but you'll experience the tiredness, or you'll look back and you'll remember how hard the month was. Then on the 29th, we have Moon and Mars in Sagittarius in the Moola Nakshatra. So again, this is a configuration that can give you some intensity anger-wise, or some drive to break a negative pattern, for example. And then on the 29th, finally, Venus goes direct. So if you make it by the 29th of January, you can expect that February, having Venus direct and Jupiter direct, is going to go much better than what we had in January. Again, January is not a bad month. It is much better than the months before. However, it is explosive because of the presence of Mars conjunct first with Ketu. So a lot of issues from the past cycle. It's the last exam, so it's again like fighting the final boss in the video game. You will show what you have learned so far, and then you have to conquer that obstacle so that the new cycle can open. So that energy of Mars, it's almost like going into the cavern and killing Medusa and then coming out of it with the courage and the value of knowing that one was able to do that. So that is a virtue that we collect and that we carry with ourselves for using forward in the future. And then what happens is the people that manage to complete that process can teach it to others so that they can overcome this time that has been pretty difficult. So encourage others. Otherwise, then Mars moves into Sagittarius, and when that happens, the energy will definitely be more upbeat. So we will realize, okay, maybe there's a new wave of the virus coming, but I think by then the world will be more upbeat, which is there's a very good amount of energy that is being allotted to having a very positive attitude in conquering the obstacles. So again, January is not the hardest month we've experienced lately. The hardest is in the past already, but this is definitely the part where we showed what we have learned and where we have to conquer the obstacle. So that goes from January all the way to the 29th of April. That's the final battle. So that's where we're going to be showing what we have learned. And my prayer to all of you, if you're watching, is try to always act on life based on your values and based on your virtues, which is try to be excellent in the way that you face reality. Don't bend your knees in the face of calamity. Go at it with the best attitude, with the best energy possible. And you will realize that anyway, the setbacks are meant to come. Bad weather is meant to come. But it doesn't mean you need to be depressed or give up or anything like that. And always, if you have a problem, try to talk to your family and friends and try to, acquire their support. Because in the end of the day, as human beings, what's important is that we're together and we're facing the odds together with the good spirit of being able to conquer whatever karma we generated in a past life. So attitude is very important, and encouragement to the people that we love is very important, and also accepting the grace of the universe is very important. Second part of the month is a part of action, very active month, with a lot of energy of encouragement, inspiration, and creating positive energy to go forward, although there's a fair amount of resistance in the planetary configurations. So it's a month to conquer obstacles. And the Kalasarpa begins. Remember, we cannot get out of it, so that's going to go on for 4 months. So I guess that the best thing we can do is have a positive attitude and really think, based on values. Take actions based on values would be the conclusion of how you can play January in the right way. So, it's open to winning, but you're going to have to be patient, work hard, and always, try to be excellent. Try to act in life from the best of you. Don't react from what is part of you that is hurt. Try to act from higher consciousness, what is best in you. So if you can give me a like or a subscribe, it really helps the channel and it helps us keep going. The calendar is there, it's available. And from my side, this is all. I wish you a very happy new year, and may this 2022 be auspicious for you. In my prediction, it'll be a much, much, much better year than the 2 years that have passed. It'll be much lighter, much better, and we will definitely shift into the next stage of human consciousness. So it's exciting times. May everything be good for you. Happy Makara Sankranti, and receive my pranam and my best wishes from Lithuania.